initial life was with
Mm-hmm.
Sire,
Yeah.
big time. So I was right by where Sire was. So at that time, they were into freelance designers, you know, and I was immediately hired, and it worked out beautifully through everything. Ramones talking, whatever I worked on, and so it was easy. But I found that later, as you were working with the big companies, there was a big thing with we got to keep the design in house. That was a big thing. We got to keep the design. And then what would happen? They said, "Wait a minute, your first cover we have to control." And if they don't like it, the group or whatever, and that's where you got our work from. A lot of the groups came to us, or after the first cover, or we were signed in contracts with Joan Jett, for instance, or Lou Reed. So they had control over the album covers, you see. But we worked with musicians all the time. We worked with management at times, different ways. But they respected our work. You know, we sometimes we were given visualizations to work with, and other times we just from scratch developed something. And so our life has been, I would say we were very spoiled because we really never changed anything on an album cover. It's amazing. And we do, I was schooled with the Yale faculty. I had an amazing design background to start off with. Judith had great schooling. And we blended together. And I think, you know what's most important? Both of us have a very big typography, a quality background. And that is essential for the elements of a good album cover. You have to have good typography. A lot of designers do not, believe it or not. But we were very fortunate and blessed with that. So that's why our career evolved into what we are.
And Judith, how has it been, we'll say, working with Spencer?
Oh God, yeah.
But you know, he's really he's quite an interesting character just in general. You know, outside of being a designer, but when it comes to work. And this is the part that, you know, it was really important to me. And I don't know about people out there that are, I have a little bit of ADD. So I'm like, you know, like, all, you know, like there. And Spencer is like very focused. Sometimes too focused, you know, because it's like he always brings me back. Yeah. And so I'm grateful for him for that, because otherwise you know, it'd be like, you know, like a hurricane all the time, a crazy, but
yeah.
You know, ideas come to me like crazy. You know, it's just I can't control it, but Spencer helps me control it. So it's been wonderful working with him. I mean, we've had a lot of you know, fights in our studio about design, but we always manage to work it out. Always, you know,
I mean,
he's the one that won to fight, and sometimes I'm the one that won to fight.
Yeah, I'll bring up an example, and Judith knows this. We were working on an album called Norwood for MCA, and Judith says, put the type on the side. Now, no one ever did this, by the way, at that point. No one ever put the side on the side. So wait a minute, let me finish the story. And so I fought with Judith, says, you can't do that, you can't do that. Well, we did it, and it was a really nice cover, but Judith would bring in these ideas that were out of the box at that time, and that nobody would do, and eventually you'd see it on other album covers. You see it on other. She was amazing. So between the both of us, you know.
Spencer, if you know, we were working for record companies. Companies, they still exist, but not like, you know, in the 70s, 80s, and they were the ones that were paying, you know, we got the check from the record company.
Right.
Sometimes they would tell us, you know, you can't do that because they're selling the album, you know, recognizing who the artist is. And when in those days, how do you recognize who the artist is when you're in a record store, you know, sorting through the bins? The name of the artist, the musician, is always at the top. It has to be at the top. So there was no real, you know, they didn't really care about the design so much as
selling it.
selling it and recognizing this is, this is the Beach Boys, top, right on top.
And on top of that, to add to that, today it's different. Like you can put art on the front, put in the back. I mean, we did covers like that, like but like Joan Jett is just, there's no type on the front, but it's on a shrink wrap. You rip it off on a clear sticker. But today there's no rules. So theoretically, you can put artwork on the front, and it's going to be seen on the back with the song stack anyway. Yeah. So you put your picture on the back. But a lot of people still scared. Musicians always put the type on the front, and the thing is, the typography usually isn't that good, and that's the thing that you've got to have, which I'm bringing up. Typography is so important, and I think it's important for kids to, if they're going to study it, they have to have a good design school, like Yale, RISD, where David Byrne, I hit it off with David Byrne. He loved my typography. RISD is a school, a Savannah School of the Art, SVA. There's certain schools that are really good in that area of graphics.
It's kind of funny, when I was working in the, I still work in the CD, DVD industry, very important, but it always amazed me how much, we'll say, critique that they put into, we'll say, the print on the CD itself. Yeah. You never would see the CD inside of the packaging. And then, it was only after that, when you bought the CD or the DVD, you would actually physically see the print on the item itself. But then I always used to laugh, because then afterwards you would put it inside of a player, you still wouldn't see it. So, it's funny how, the emphasis of design changed, we'll say, in the evolution of the technology. But now that we'll say, the resurgence of vinyl is back again, I would imagine a lot of the younger people that are buying vinyl right now, they may not know who a lot of these, will say, artists are, but they're drawn to the packaging. And it's I heard, I don't know if this is a correct specification or not, or an industry, we'll say, number, but I heard that with the younger people that are buying vinyl, it's close to 50% of them are not even opening it up. They just want to have something that's tactile.
Wow, that's great.
Brian, if I may, that's a really interesting topic that you are mentioning, because I think for the future, I think that the direction that they're trying or going to go in is that we're going to have, whether it's a lens, and some kind of an eye that we put in, or some sort of glasses, where you'll be able to connect it to your album or to the music cover. And then it's like, if you've ever seen the Terminator, the movie, where the robots, the vision, they like all this, like he looks at something and there's this computer screen in front of his face, that tells him all about what he's looking at and who's all the different features of that image or that person, or it's a car, the year, it's a person, that I think that that's going to happen in our future with augmented reality. And we're looking at an album cover or an art or a piece of art that somebody's created. Maybe Spencer and I have created it, but there's going to be layers on top of that piece of art, where you're looking at the art. So maybe one of the layers will be the lyrics. One of the layers will be a liner notes that you'll be able to read.
What is the design process like? I know that you've worked with a tremendous amount of musicians. 25 of those artists are now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
How involved were they in the project? Was it just something that came from the record studio, or were you working directly with the artists?
It really varied. We if anything, we got a visualization, something of whatever it is, either a picture or illustration, and we augmented it with our type design, which made it really nice. But it really varied from album to album. We always started by listening to the music. Judith could tell you that. We always wanted to hear what is in that album and then work it from there. we never had, I don't remember people really pushing us to do a certain idea. They would suggest something, if anything, but there was never a thing we were forced into a play. We managed to design with the elements, really great packaging, have a certain freedom. I think it's because of the quality of work we had that they saw it, and they would, as we're going along and they're looking at it, they see it was going the right way. So in a sense, another designers don't have that same thing. They'll have a client looking over their shoulder all the time. There are different areas where, and I think that is where a compromise happens, and that's where the design goes off the table into the ditch, you know, where, and then all of a sudden you're controlled by something. But we've never had that, thank God. And you can see our album covers, the results of that.
Yeah, yeah. And back then, and then compared to now, what was like timelines and budgets? Because now it seems that timelines are very short, because there is, we'll say, this digital world that we're living in, which is a very now world where artists want to, we'll say, put things up as quickly as possible into the digital world, but it takes longer on the physical side. So how do we compare it to what it was
well,
then?
Today, let me get this, Judith, okay? Because you know I know about the scheduling. But we would do it like a month. Now we want to take a month. We want to do a piece in a month. In the old days, it was like, I mean, I did Billy Squier's cover in 48 hours because he had to get an airplane, you know? But in the old days, it was usually you had about a month. You really did. You had about a month. You didn't have a week. And today, because of our background, I want Judith and I to relax. So I tell them we have a month, and that's what we have. Whenever we work on a project, we usually have a month to put it together. Then it goes to the, you know, whoever prints it. And then there are different parts of it where the recording goes in earlier, right, from the artist. And it's timed so that the cover is produced with the disc or whatever, the album. And so there's like a schedule, you know. Everything's integrated. And Judith and I are usually good on production. We usually get the artists together if they don't know about it and put them into that scheduling so that the thing works out, you know. But there is a schedule, but we like to do things in a month, and it seems like the artists accept that, you know, because nowadays there really is no such thing as a rush job. In the old days, there was a record company said, well, you got to get this album out and da-da-da, right? But you don't have that today. The musicians are pretty much relaxed on producing. And if they want to work with you and you've got a certain schedule, they'll do that. You know, that's what I find. Right, Judith? I mean, I don't know.
No, it's, everything you said is right on. We always managed. I mean, in the old days, there were many deadlines that we had to meet. You know, record companies provide you with these deadlines, and there's no getting around it. You have, you know, art has to be delivered by this date, and sometimes it would be a week, sometimes it would be 2 weeks, sometimes it would be a couple of days. Yeah, so.
Well, normally it was more than a couple of weeks. That's what I remember. I mean,
well, sometimes it was a couple. There were times it was a few months. No?
But I mean, a month. Lou Reed, for instance, that was like wow. One was like a couple of months because he had to go through legal contract. Yeah. Then there was the other album, New York, which was about a month. They usually put us okay, but then again, like I said, Billy Squier had an unusual setup where he had to get this album cover that was turned down. He turned down, and he wanted in 48 hours. That's a great story. And he took the plane, and it was delivered. But you know, you had these. But I never remember really more than that insanity again.
Well, yeah. What about the Beach Boys?
The Beach Boys. That was right. Beach Boys. We had to go into a hotel at a meeting, Brian.
Wait a minute.
We had the visuals.
Yeah. It was a special. What was it? It was already designed. The
artwork.
The art. The whole thing was already designed, and it was. Who were the designers, Spencer? I can't remember.
No. I got to call you on that. We got the artwork. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I got the art. We got the artwork from Mike Love. That was it. After that, we did the typography. We had to run back to the office, whip together a color Xerox multi-panel in those days, Brian, multi-panel thing. Then run back to the hotel the next day, and they okayed it. And they loved our work. That was the other thing. You know what's funny, Brian? I had to call up Jan and Dean, one of them, Dean Turrence. Dean Turrence designed the Beach Boys logo, right? The original Beach Boys logo, which you see. And so I asked him, I always like to know the background. And you know what he told me, Brian? He says, they fire a lot of designers. That's what he told me. So I said, oh my God, what are we going to go through? But I went there. They loved our work. Mike Love took our CD around after. It was beautiful. It's a multi-panel with paintings by Robert Lynn Nelson, ecological painter. Beautiful. And so, but Judith is right. We have to do it fast.
And his sailboat in that painting.
You're right. Right. So it varied, you know, the time schedule, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, do you have some of the albums that you've designed? Do you have anything that's very recognizable? Yes, indeed.
That's it's in chronological order. So we're going to start with my design, and we'll go into Judith and mine. This is for Sire Records, Road to Ruin, very famous. John Holmstrom cartoon on the front, and this was a really amazing album. And also, we have a 5-color. We have a silver plus 4-color printing on this. And it sold okay later, actually more later. But it's one of those historic Ramones covers. The next cover, which is a very nice design cover. It got onto a lot of design awards. It's Alder Reserve, Love Goes On. Brad Ellis did the front piece, which is almost like Japanese type thing. It's a very simple cover, but I thought a really good design. You know, it was won a lot of design awards. The third one is historical. I co-designed with Talking Heads, and this is it. It won nominated for a Grammy in Best Packaging, in the archival collection, in the MoMA permanent collection, and in a MoMA show. This is, and in the 100 best album cover book by Storm Thorgerson profile. But this is a very famous album cover. It was an embossed cover. Jerry Harrison had the idea of a deck plate design he found on the floor. And then I worked on the typography with David Byrne, which was his typewriter type. So I ended up going into this room with these typewriter women, and they're typing out Talking Heads, Fear of Music, Talking Heads, Fear of Music, and so many different typewriter typefaces on a typewriter. And then I blew it up. I put it ruled between the lines, boxed it in, got the idea of a green, Dayglow green PMS mix ink. And it's a very simple cover. And in the back, the deck plate design goes on without a barcode. And by the way, this is the last album to go in without a barcode. Thank God, Brian. So, and then we get, here we go again, the Ramones. Now this Mick Rock famous photograph on the front. And this was a controversial cover. First cover that they ever had without their leather jackets on. So this was a story in itself. I got to show you the inner sleeve because this is what I did with this leather jacket photograph. I converted it into a high posterized picture on a yellow background, knocked out all the gray tones. And that was used for the 45 overseas. The group really liked this solution. So they used it on 45s overseas, you see. Next album, Robert Ellis Oral Fixation, RCA Records. This was a really cool album. And if you look at the front, now look at the back. Great illustration. And I worked with Steve Byram on this, with David Gambale illustrated it. This won a lot of design awards, this album. Next one is another famous album, Billy Squier, Don't Say No, multi-platinum. This got me on MTV because of this album, and it's a very simple album. Took the photograph shot by Jeffrey Thomas, shot it downstairs in a bathroom, and the record company didn't like the bare foot, Brian, the bare foot shown in the picture. So,
Too risky.
but yeah, too risky. But Billy had the control over the cover. He said, "Screw that," and the cover went through. But I converted the photograph into a color Xerox because the album feeling is very raw, produced by Reinhold Mack. And that rawness, I wanted to convert into visualization on the front cover. So the color Xerox, which was actually used this idea on a Foreigner cover, on a group called Foreigner, with a girl in a bathtub and a color Xerox. But I didn't realize it when I did this. But it was a solution to feel. This is where you integrate the sound with the cover, I think. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever I see that cover, man, I just remember high school. It just resonates in the back of my head when I see that.
So now we start with Judith and me, this romantic relationship in design. I had finished the cover and the front type. This was the catch. I could not figure out what color because it's such a delicate thing to deal with because the painting is beautiful. It's like an oil-based paint reproduced. And Judith, she is the one that got the idea through a PMS blue, a blue color. And that's what blends in with the cover so beautifully and makes it. And the back cover, they sort of go together. Won an AIGA cover award, and E. Leibowitz and Roger Black voted it in, very big names. Beautiful cover, I thought, you know, Brian?
Yeah, indeed. And it's great collaboration.
Yeah, and this one is a classic.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is where, Judith, you know this one. Okay, so this one, clear sticker on the front, rip off, left with a photograph by Dieter Zill. And then Judith could tell you that we went through different things with this, black and white, back cover, surrounded by color. I thought, instead of doing all color, let's play black and white against color so the eye doesn't go nuts on this. And then when you open it up, you're getting a double panel, Mick Rock, color, again, surrounded by black and white, which I thought would help it out. And on the other side, as Judith knows, we got a lot of photographs to work with. And the management wanted a lot of travel photographs. So that's how we dealt with that.
Okay.
And then we get into Judith, Bon Jovi. So Jeffrey Thomas photographed this. It's a front back, very interesting. It's a front to back photo. And then color tinted. Judith in the logo at the top came up with the idea of the diamond in the middle, which is, I'll tell you what went on, because the logos after that used that diamond that Judith had the idea of in logos after that. It's like a stayed thing in the idea, a concept. But in the type at the top, the road goes, if you can't see it, the road goes through the type. It's a very simple cover. It sold like a gold record, a platinum now, you know, first album.
It has they debuted the single Runaway on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, right.
Which was a huge hit.
Victory. Okay, group Friends of the Scorpions. Helmut Newton-esque photograph by Jeffrey Thomas again. And I did letter spaced like a la Led Zeppelin type lettering above it. Basically, that's the cover. It was censored by CBS. They almost didn't print it. They ended up printing it. Judith, do you want to put some tidbit on this? You were involved with it.
No, it's just, you know, like women's livers probably will have excommunicated me for coming to the concept, but you know, I just, you know, look, it's a German band, you know, it's heavy metal, it's, you know, what is heavy? Sex, right? And loud music. And I just thought of, you know, using, I don't know how the idea came to me, spreading your legs with it.
Well, you know what's interesting about this? Judith knows this. We're in a lot of magazines but all the magazines wanted this cover. They all wanted this in the article. Or we did a book, like a book design, in a profile in a book design. I mean, a book on design. They'd always want this cover. It was like the lead-off cover. And that's what's amazing, the draw of the magnetism of this cover, you know?
And the woman, that woman, by the way, is the photographer's wife's sister.
Right.
Okay.
So this is what we're talking about, Brian, because the front of this cover was supposed to be a photograph. And Jimmy Vaughn comes in my office and shows me this painting done by Deanne Youngblood, a Native American. And I said, wow, this is great artwork, perfect square, perfect cover. But the record company, first album, CBS, wanted the Fabulous Thunderbirds to do a photograph on the front. And I said, oh my God. So Jimmy Vaughn calls me up. He's going to a meeting at CBS. And he said, Spencer, what should I do? I said, do you have the picture there? I said, yeah. And this is I never did it again. I said, Jimmy, go in there and tell them, not ask them, tell them that's the cover. I get a call back, Brian. 3 hours later, they said, I'm fired. I'm fired from the job. And then 3 days later, it became the cover. It became the cover.
Well, you remember, Spencer, you and I had a huge discussion about what to do with that piece of art. And you were saying that this is what the company wants. We have to go with the company because you said they're going to fire us. And I said, no way, we're using the art. And then I was able to convince you to go back because, you know, in those days, Brian, women, that's a whole nother story. Me as a female artist, I can give you stories about that, how ignored I was and how
I'll tell you something. When I saw this art, it was a knockout.
I convinced him that we're not putting images, we're putting that art on there. Spencer agreed finally and said, okay. And that's when you went back and told him, no, we want that
Well,
art.
yeah, because I thought about it. You know, that's what.
You know what that's to think about.
Wait a minute. I thought about it. Wait a minute. I thought about it because we would have, and that's what's good about us. At least I thought about it and accepted it. I could have said no. I could have said no. And when he called me up, I could have said no, go ahead, whatever. I didn't do that.
You knew they were going to fire us. You knew that.
Well, I did it anyway before he went into the meeting. Before he went in the meeting.
I know.
I said, here's the artwork.
That's a great story. And Judith, no, we should save that for part 2. We'll say what it was like for women in
not
the
a pretty
times.
picture.
Yeah, women. I
can imagine.
The clients always came to me, and I worked with an agency with a guy named Bob Antler and a woman named Sally Baldwin who got me a job in her agency with Bob. And I learned one day I walked in the office and Bob got a phone call from a client. And Bob told the client this, and I heard him say this. He said, look, if you're going to talk to me, you have to talk to my partner, Sally. I never forgot that. And so I know Judith was always telling me, Spencer, they're not talking to me. Where the hell are they coming from? And then later I said, you know what? She's part of my life. She is definitely the glue that puts me together. She has to be recognized. And that's what I've done, by the way. I think we've vaulted her. We've vaulted each other, and I've helped her vault herself into now major recognition. But I'll tell you, she's right. I mean, Sylvia Reed told us that she would always be labeled as Lou Reed's wife. That was it. But she's a great creative person. She worked with us on the Lou Reed covers you'll see, and she was really demeaned.
Sylvia was the first person, actually, and I'm so grateful to her and indebted to her. She was the first. So Sylvia Reed, you know, was Lou Reed's ex-wife.
Right.
To her prior to Laurie Anderson, they were together for like a good 14 years.
Yeah.
And Sylvia was the first person to actually recognize me separate. I mean, you know, Spencer and I are the design team, but she was able to recognize me as an individual designer and also acknowledge, you know, my input and my design ideas and everything, you know, me, Judith, as opposed to, you know, having a conversation about the design and never looking at me always looking at Spencer.
Oh, wow.
There was no connection with me. I was just like, oh, in the back. But Sylvia never did that. She
You're right.
recognized.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And Sylvia, correct me wrong, she was a judge also with making vinyl, right?
Yeah, I brought
At our
Sylvia.
packaging awards, yeah.
Yeah, I brought Sylvia in one year, and she judged with us. She definitely did, and she has a great eye, by the way. I
Yeah,
mean,
she
she's
is.
really right.
Yeah.
No problem.
Let's go into the next cover,
Yeah.
because this is Dee Dee King, and Bob Gruen brought us into the project, the famous Bob Gruen with the front and back, and I thought of using all these photographs. And Judith at the top worked with Pat Kernan, who did a lot of work with us at CBS to do the logo design for the album. And the album didn't do so well, but the cover turned out really great, I thought. It was in
Terribly.
by the way, all these covers are in the archival collection, our archival collection, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, all of them. This is Lou Reed, New York album with Sylvia Reed. We both worked on it with Sylvia. An old 1930s photograph that Lou liked called A Gang of Men, photographer unknown. He adapted changing the clothes himself into different costumes for the front cover. I put the type into the top outline type so you can see the wall coming through. Basically, it's a very famous album. Sire Records, Seymour Stein signed Lou and revived his career with this album. Had a very famous song called Dirty Boulevard on it. Very famous, right?
Yeah, we love that song.
Right. And the last album, which Judith had a big play in, photographed by Louis Jamais, given to us by Sylvia and Lou, a type going around it. Alchemy Symbols. Okay, so Judith will get into this one. Judith, go ahead.
Well, I mean, all the symbols at each corner. Sylvia and I, bought this book of symbols and I don't remember at this point what the meanings of the symbols are, but at that time, each symbol has a specific meaning. There's reason to the madness of putting these symbols on at the corners. And Sylvia could actually tell us a more complete story about that. They also, after doing this album cover, designing it, they also asked Spencer and I if we could, because he went on tour with this, Lou.
Right.
And they wanted those symbols, they wanted to be able to project them on the stage floor as he's performing and behind him. Mm-hmm. So they asked us if we could make the slides, the glass slides.
Yeah.
And paint the symbols onto the glass slides. Right. So that job was given to me, and in retrospect, probably should have asked for a great deal of money for having done that, which I didn't, because the fumes from, oh my God, Brian, the fumes from the paint, it had to be special paint because the slides get so hot.
Yeah, right.
When they're projecting it. And I mean, I wore a mask, but you could, like Spencer sometimes would come into the room and he could still smell.
Horrible.
Powerful. But it was pretty, it was a real high when we went to one of the concerts when he performed in New York City, and they projected those
slides. He loved them. Yeah, and Lou loved the slides.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Lou loved it. And here's a book that we authored, 545 is going to bring this in. This is a vital resurgence health book of the 45 history that we did in 2010, Judith and I. It's a beautiful book. Lenny Kay wrote the
some of the interior.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
And we have to explain to you about this because the interior, it's all visual, it's all pictures on each page, but there's meaning to the pictures that are the pictures on the left and the pictures on the right all have something in common. So it's up to the viewer, the person looking, oh, well, what this says, this has a blue type, and yeah, there's the blue type on that one too,
Oh, okay.
But they each have something similar.
Right. Well, now that you're pointing it out, I'm starting to see some similarities in the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Design
And
purpose
and that is that book still available? Is that
Yes, it
something
is.
that
Yeah, you can go on Amazon. It's very available. And the other book, the last one, album art. We're in this. We're actually interviewed in this book, and anyway, we're interviewed in this book called Album Art, New Music Graphics by John Foster. It was put out in 2018. They interviewed Paula Scher, Stefan Sagmeister, very famous Art Chantry, and we're interviewed in. It's a very beautiful book, and it shows like, you know, top design, you know,
yeah, yeah.
different people, Sub Pop, everybody. I mean, it's just like a really gorgeous book, and so that's about what I wanted to show for us.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I'm really super happy that we finally got to do this. I know.
Oh, me too. Judith and I, right, Judith?
Yeah, I know that we've been trying to do this for a while. We've tried to do it live, but you know, with COVID, another good thing has come out of this, that we've been able to do this together.
Oh, great.
Sadly, we've come to the end of our time, and it's starting to thunder outside, so I don't know on my internet right now.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to continue our relationship with making vinyl. It means a lot to us, both of us.
Oh, well, that's great. And it means a lot to us also to have both of your support. Thanks again so much
and
for everything that you've done in the past, and thanks again for today.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Yep.
All right. All right. Well, we'll stay in. Yeah. Have a good day, and we'll stay in virtual contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye for now.
Bye.